strategist. He's a painter. He's a futurist. Bayard Saunders has pursued a lifetime as an explorer of communications, of technology, and of the human condition. He's a Jesuit-educated teacher, an award-winning performance artist, and a digital marketing maven from Michigan via California. He despises categorization and relishes innovation, and I believe this is maybe the third time you've told a story for me, too. So please welcome Bayard.
This is titled The Purpose Tango. And the reason is, I wanted to start with a story about Tango Class. So, not too terribly long ago, I was in a Tango class for the first time. And there was a couple demonstrating the dance. And if you've seen it, Brazilian tango, very passionate. Incredible, actually, and the moves are so graceful and so inspiring, but very seemed complex to me. And I asked, well, how is this possible? I mean, how many years does somebody have to study something like this in order to be this good? I mean, I know I see the ballroom people, people who are dancers, they ballet. It's decades of study, and. The instructor said, no, it's really just the basic of techniques that you need to learn. And once you understand the basics, then the tango is really about improvisation, and it has two parts to it. The first part is the leader, and it can be a man or a woman, and it doesn't really matter. But the leader doesn't follow a specific pattern. The leader proposes by their movement. They propose to their follower which direction we might go, what tempo, what speed, whether we would stop, and then it's up to the follower, person to respond to that proposal. So it's proposal and response is the key to that, and that's what creates that unique, incredible experience of that dance. Which is why I think when we talk about purpose, if you understand the meaning of the word purpose, right? It's not in the Bible because it's actually a newer word. It came about in the year somewhere between 1200 or 1300. It's a French word, and it came from the root proposer, somebody who proposes something. And they propose a definition, a direction, a meaning, right? And this is the entymology of it. And I know about the entymology because I have this horrible Jesuit education, which means that we were forced to understand the philosophies and the etymologies behind words. And I remember there was this one very old professor who was very confusing to me at the time, and he also began a whole series of lecture on his philosophy class by taking off his Rolex and holding it in front of us and saying, "Gentlemen, what's the purpose of a watch? How does a watch know its purpose?" Now, at the time, I thought, well, and just as you might be thinking now, watch has a purpose. It's a thing. It can't know its purpose. So this is a dumb question. But maybe. So what if a watch had consciousness? How would it discover its purpose? Well, I'm certain that the old professor meant, because there was a creator who designed this, and this was it was living out its reason for its design. But in reality, for human beings, we are evolving consciousness. So it is something that I've heard over and over described tonight and by others as something that's discovered. something, your purpose is revealed to you because of your experiences. Your purpose is never set in stone. It's something that is constantly changing. If you're aware and you're continuing on a lifelong education, can your purpose change? Maybe by your inputs, yes it can. How do you get your clues? How do you receive them? I was of probably the last generation of children who were allowed to simply go in stores. I mean, it's unheard of today, of course, because you wouldn't know anything about it. It's child abuse to let a child go. But I have distinct memories of being 4 years old and wandering through a stores looking for the music toy section, the toy instruments. I clearly remember that. And in fact, years later, my mother would say, you know, I never worried about you if you were ever lost in the store. I just went to the music toy section, and there you'd be. Right? Because that was my interest. That was my love, and that was what I was most attracted to without, you know, as a child. No conscious decision of that. And I remember also, I was 5 years old, and in kindergarten, there was an assignment. And this assignment, the teacher said, today we're going to draw what we want to be when we grow up. So everyone sat with crayons, and it was in those crayon sessions I discovered how much I liked art, and how bad I was at it, and how much I desperately needed lessons, because technique is so critical if you want to do what you want to do. But, so I never thought about career until that point. But of course, there were things that happened to me as a child, things that I would naturally do. I didn't think about music, but every time I would walk to school, it was about 2.5 blocks, it started out all right for me, but I was a person who was easily distracted as a child. Curious, it would be the best way to describe it. So my curiosity led me to be increasingly late for kindergarten, like to the point where the people would panic. So I would be getting to kindergarten about 2 hours later, because I'd stop and I'd say, oh, look at these flowers, and oh, I want to play with these rocks, and go over that stream, and I haven't seen that tree in a long time. So this was a natural curiosity. So when I sat down to draw what I wanted to be when I grew up, I thought, what I really want to be is an explorer. I want to explore the world. Right, so I drew my trees, and they were big in the forest, right? And there I was, and I was little, and I had my backpack on, and I was going to go out, and I was going to be an explorer. I was so proud of this piece, and when we finished, and everybody was bringing them up to the teacher, and I brought it to mine, and she looked at it, and she said, well, what is this? And I said, well, I want to be an explorer. She said, no, dear. Draw what you want to be when you grow up. You know, see, Bill wants to be a fireman. You know, Tom, he wants to be a policeman. Now, you know, Susie, she's going to be a nurse. You go and draw what you want to be when you grow up. So I sat down and drew a fireman. But it always stuck with me, because I'd always thought, well, perhaps there was some other. I was going to prove that teacher wrong. And that's how I was as a child, probably still am. In my family, we had a very, very strict upbringing, and there were spoken rules and unspoken rules. And the spoken rule was, you can be anything you want to be. You can be anything you want to be. Just be the best thing possible. You want to be a garbage collector? Be a garbage collector. Just be the best garbage collector there is. There ever was. Award-winning garbage collector. And the unspoken rule was, okay, you're either going to be a doctor or you're going to be a lawyer. You want to play music? Fine. You want to draw things? You want to write things? Yeah, that's fine. But you can do that not as a profession. You know, it's an avocation. These are not things that people do for a living. Right? And as a result, I had a preponderance of things that I liked to do. I had a chemistry set in the basement. I built a crystal radio. I hung out at Radio Shack and bought parts and built those things. When it was time for the science fairs, I built my own computer. Well, not really. I built a little light switch, but it was kind of like a computer. And I drew things about relativity and Einstein, and only got honorable mentions for it because people didn't like the volcanoes better. They liked the volcanoes. And I remember taking piano lessons. I had classical piano lessons, and I was a voracious student of music. Piano wasn't enough. I had taken up guitar on my own because I thought, oh, rock musicians are much cooler than pianists. And then I thought, oh, and when I got in a band, same thing, absolutely. Trumpet, clarinet, all of the woodwinds, all of the brass instruments. Percussion is when I started there. And I began to, I hated the technique that was necessary. So I dropped off the piano, and then years later I had found, stop that. Years later I had found a love of jazz. It came back to me because it was something that I wanted to do. From my inner nature was pushing me to this. There was and then punk rock bands, and then rock bands, and then so it was always avocation. There was a show and tell in school. I remember the very first time when I'd actually played a musical instrument in front of somebody, and the reaction was phenomenal because in that time I had not been very popular. But afterwards, showing off some art, this was something that changed the way that people related to me. It was there was a writing contest, and I had written a story about the future. I love drawing pictures of the future cities. I like drawing the architecture of them. I like thinking about the Jetsons and this, and although it wasn't at the time, but I just loved being in that area. And that's what I wrote the story about, because this was passionate about, and won that, and just was delighted to continue that. Had poetry, journaling, journalism in the school paper, open mic nights, and playing, and any time I could get in front of people. There was a book at the time, J.D. Salinger's Franny and Zoe, maybe some of you know it. The last 4 pages talk about Franny is an actress, her brother Zoe, she's having a breakdown, doesn't know why she wants to continue doing what her purpose in life is doing. They have been on a radio show as kids. And so he's talking to her, and he tells her about the fact that, what he did when he was performing, he would picture this fat lady sitting on her porch in the summer listening to the radio show. And he imagined that she was, incredibly overweight and had cancer and was just suffering, and it was the only highlight of her day was their show. It was the only relief for her. And so he imagined that every single one of the listeners was this fat lady. And that's how that was his passion, to be able to give in that way, to be able to propose his work and to have someone receive it. When I started college, I did the same thing that everybody else does. And it's another dance. It's called the college major mambo. You remember that? Yes? And so I want to be this, I want to be that, it's going to be my major, my minor. There were a lot of things that I had tried to do. And the things that I was really good at, or found that I was good at, one of them was teaching. And had taught in the summers to make very little money. Those of you who are teachers will know exactly what I'm talking about. Almost money at all. In the recreation department. And I was teaching improvisational theater to children. Comedy, improv theater, everything from split skits and to plays. And so did this, and there was a friend of mine who worked for the poorest church in Detroit. Absolutely in the most, you can't imagine, it's the worst possible section of Detroit. And there was this very small church there who said, you know what, we have kids here and we've got a summer program and we can't afford really anything at all. Can you come and give a few hours and just do this for us? And so I did because I thought it was a worthwhile thing to do, and he was a good friend, and so I did this, and worked all summer, and it was bad enough in the rec department. I think I got $300 for all of my work that summer, and then but no money for this group. But I was very creative because there was no money, so it was a chance to use that creativity, and I had stolen theater in the university, props and costumes, and I brought a video to tape the kids, and we did all kinds of really, really fun things with them. And then so it was near the end of the summer. I got a call from the pastor they had at the church and said, you got to come tonight to we're going to have a special meeting. And I thought for sure I was busted. I thought for sure somebody called from the university and they were going to take me down for having taken all this stuff away. And so we were in the church basement. It was probably about a quarter of this size, about the same amount of people that had showed up. And I thought, well, maybe it's something else. And so the meeting started, and in walks the pastor, and in behind him walks Rosa Parks, and behind her Mother Teresa. Oh. And Mother Teresa just opened her whatever it was, her mission here in Detroit that day, and it was an astounding experience. They're both as small as you can imagine, like about 4 feet tall. But think of them, the amazing things that they did in their lives, the incredible purpose that they had. And I was always curious about how they were called to their purpose and what drove them. And although I didn't have a chance to ask that night, after I graduated from college, I had worked as paralegal for Rosa Parks' attorney. And Rosa Parks' attorney ran the Rosa Parks Foundation, and I had a conversation with him once, and he said, well, she was sort of the reluctant activist. She did this one thing once and didn't necessarily want to become the leader or to be a figure that she was, but she did it because she felt a responsibility to it. And then later, even later than that, I'd read Mother Teresa's book, and in her book, she talked about, I had a real strong conviction for my purpose when I started what I was going to do. Incredibly strong, call from God, conversations with him, in fact. And then, when I started my work, nothing. I spent 50 years, she said, in this hole, this darkness, where I had no more direction, no more contact, where I doubted all the time what I was doing. But 50 years, and worldwide, the amazing things that she did, the incredible things, the purpose. So for myself, in combining all of this technology and all of this art and all of the things that I had done, the pieces that came together for me was when the internet was launched, and suddenly people had to relate through technology to each other and find ways that creativity could be applied in that. And so that's where I had started to really come out and be able to do the things. Purpose was sort of revealed to me, but that discovery wasn't enough. It's not enough just to discover your purpose. You have to propose it. You have to go out and say and declare, I am this. I am this artist. I am this dancer. I am a painter. I am a musician. You declare it. You have that intent. You propose it. You actively pursue it. And that is the Purpose Tango.